The tension in the courtroom was palpable as the trial unfolded, revealing a disturbing narrative hidden beneath the glittering surface of Sean Diddy Combs' luxurious lifestyle. The term hotel nights became synonymous with a series of events that the prosecution argued were orchestrated to exploit and manipulate young women who were promised fame and opportunity, but instead found themselves trapped in a web of control and fear. Witnesses described how these nights were meticulously planned, with invitations extended to hopeful artists and associates who believed they were stepping into a world of glamour. Yet, once inside the exclusive hotel suites, the atmosphere shifted drastically. Phones were confiscated, security personnel maintained strict oversight, and the women were subjected to intense psychological pressure. The music was cranked to high volumes, not only as ambiance, but as a calculated measure to mask any cries for help or distress. Survivors recounted harrowing details of being drugged, restrained, and isolated from the outside world with no means to communicate or escape. One such witness, protected under anonymity as Jane Doe, testified to the regimented nature of these nights. She described how the rooms were transformed into virtual prisons, with blackout curtains drawn tight and security stationed outside the doors. Every movement was monitored, and any resistance was met with intimidation or threats. The prosecution presented text messages filled with coded language, words like kits and supplies that, according to experts, indicated the preparation of drugs and restraints used during these gatherings. The defense argued that all interactions were consensual and framed the parties as wild but mutual celebrations. But the evidence told a more sinister story. Physical evidence, including photos of injuries and medical reports, was laid bare in court, reinforcing the testimonies of the survivors. A former bodyguard stepped forward, revealing how his role morphed from protector to an unwilling accomplice, tasked with enforcing the rules of the hotel nights. He spoke of detailed instructions to disable cameras, restrict movement, and ensure the secrecy of what transpired behind the closed doors. His testimony included accounts of how attempts to voice concern were met with threats against his livelihood and family. Leaked surveillance footage surfaced, showing a frightened woman fleeing a hotel hallway with visible bruises, an image that shocked the public and underscored the severity of the allegations. Industry insiders and former employees painted a broader picture of complicity. Loyalty was maintained through contracts, hush money, and veiled threats, creating an environment where speaking out was dangerous. Executives and promoters, aware of rumors, chose silence to protect their interests and avoid confrontation with a powerful figure. Psychological manipulation was as rampant as physical abuse. Victims spoke of isolation, gaslighting, and emotional intimidation designed to break their will. The prosecution meticulously connected these testimonies and evidence to construct a narrative of a criminal enterprise, one that used fame and power as weapons to exploit vulnerable individuals. The defense aimed to create doubt by highlighting inconsistencies and questioning motives, but the weight of corroborated stories and documents made their task difficult. The trial illuminated the dark intersection of celebrity culture, power dynamics, and systemic exploitation, prompting jurors and the public to confront uncomfortable realities. Outside the courtroom, the media frenzy fueled debates about the role of social media, the impact of public opinion on justice, and the responsibility of the entertainment industry. The trial also sparked calls for reform within record labels, event organizers, and streaming platforms to prevent future abuses. Advocacy groups used the spotlight to push for trauma-informed legal approaches and systemic changes to protect survivors. Sean Combs' personal and professional legacy hung in the balance. Once hailed as a cultural icon and philanthropist, he now faced scrutiny that threatened to redefine how history would remember him. Supporters argued for recognition of his contributions, while critics insisted on accountability and justice. The jury's eventual verdict was expected to be a landmark, potentially setting precedents for how similar cases involving powerful celebrities are handled. The trial also highlighted the challenges of seeking justice in the digital age, where social media, forensic evidence, and public scrutiny collide. Balancing the rights of the accused with the voices of survivors created a complex legal and cultural landscape. The proceedings underscored the need for reforms in how allegations of this nature are investigated and prosecuted. Furthermore, The case raised important questions about the roles and responsibilities of those surrounding influential figures, managers, security teams, and industry gatekeepers, in either enabling or preventing abuse. Calls for independent oversight and stronger reporting mechanisms grew louder as the trial progressed. As the final days of the trial approached, the courtroom became a stage for a broader reckoning about power, consent, and accountability. The case transcended one individual, reflecting society's struggle to confront exploitation hidden behind wealth and fame. Survivors reclaimed their voices, demanding to be heard, while the legal system grappled with complex questions of justice. Every testimony, every piece of evidence, wove a tapestry exposing the shadowy corners of celebrity culture and influence. The trial marked a turning point, not only in Sean Combs' life, but in the fight against systemic abuse in the entertainment world. As the jury retired to deliberate, the world watched, knowing the outcome would resonate far beyond the courtroom walls, shaping conversations about power, justice, and healing for years to come. The revelations kept coming as the trial progressed, each testimony peeling back layers of secrecy and denial that had shielded the alleged events for years. Witness after witness stepped forward, many battling personal trauma and fear, united by a shared determination to expose the truth behind the facade of glamour that had entrapped them. One particularly harrowing account came from a former assistant who described the manipulative tactics employed to recruit women into the so-called hotel nights. She spoke of how hopeful young artists were promised career-making opportunities, lucrative contracts, and VIP access, only to be ensnared in a cycle of exploitation. Invitations to exclusive after-parties were extended with whispered promises, creating a sense of urgency and exclusivity that left recipients feeling they could not afford to refuse. Upon arrival, however, the atmosphere was anything but welcoming. Guests found themselves stripped of autonomy, with security measures designed to isolate and intimidate. The assistant revealed how drugs were subtly introduced into drinks, often without the knowledge or consent of the women involved. This was corroborated by toxicology reports entered into evidence, revealing substances consistent with sedatives and incapacitating agents. The defense challenged these findings vigorously, citing alternative explanations and questioning the chain of custody of the samples, but the prosecution maintained their credibility with expert testimony. The emotional toll on survivors was evident, as several described the psychological warfare they endured. Victims spoke of constant surveillance, whispered threats, and the ever-present fear of retaliation. The trauma was compounded by the public scrutiny of the trial, forcing many to relive their experiences under the harsh spotlight of media coverage. Mental health professionals testified on the lasting impact of such abuse, emphasizing the importance of trauma-informed care and the difficulties survivors face in coming forward. Another shocking dimension emerged from the testimony of an industry insider who detailed the network of enablers that sustained the hotel nights operations. From event planners to personal assistants, a web of complicity was painted, with individuals either turning a blind eye or actively facilitating the exploitation to maintain favor with powerful figures. The insider disclosed how non-disclosure agreements and hush money were routinely used to silence victims and prevent damaging information from leaking. The prosecution introduced financial records showing suspicious payments and transfers, suggesting attempts to conceal illicit activities. This evidence further challenged the defense's assertion that the events were consensual and social in nature. The courtroom also heard from a survivor who recounted an escape from one of the hotel suites. She described how, amidst the chaos of a late-night gathering, she found a brief window to flee, despite the constant presence of security personnel. Her harrowing dash through the hotel corridors, documented partially by surveillance footage, became a focal point in the trial, illustrating the desperation and courage of those trapped within. In cross-examination, defense attorneys attempted to undermine her credibility by questioning inconsistencies and motives, but her testimony remained resolute and compelling. The trial exposed the chilling use of technology in controlling and monitoring victims. Testimonies revealed that phone signals were jammed during events, and guests' devices were often confiscated or disabled. This high level of surveillance contributed to the sense of entrapment and helplessness experienced by survivors. Experts explained how these measures were sophisticated and premeditated, indicating a well-organized operation rather than spontaneous misconduct. Public reaction to the trial was intense and divided. Social media platforms erupted with debate, with some defending Combs and others condemning the alleged abuses. Hashtags related to the case trended worldwide, and advocacy groups leveraged the moment to amplify calls for systemic change. The trial became a catalyst for discussions about the power imbalances inherent in the entertainment industry and the urgent need for protective reforms. Meanwhile, legal analysts dissected the complex procedural aspects of the case. The lengthy discovery phase had uncovered tens of thousands of documents, emails, and messages, many redacted or heavily scrutinized for relevance and privilege. The defense argued that the volume and nature of the evidence were overwhelming and prejudicial, while the prosecution insisted it was critical to establishing a pattern of behavior. Judges navigated these disputes with careful rulings, balancing the rights of both parties. The intense media coverage also raised ethical questions about the presumption of innocence versus the court of public opinion. Journalists and commentators grappled with responsible reporting, striving to inform without sensationalizing or compromising the integrity of the trial. The judge issued multiple gag orders to curb leaks and maintain fairness, but enforcement was challenging in the age of instantaneous information sharing. The financial stakes of the trial were staggering. Beyond potential criminal penalties, civil lawsuits were filed seeking damages for emotional distress and loss of career opportunities. Insurance companies, sponsors, and business partners reassessed their relationships with Combs, leading to withdrawals and contract cancellations. The ripple effects extended to the music industry at large, sparking conversations about accountability and the responsibility of those in positions of influence. Throughout the trial, emotional moments punctuated the proceedings. Testimonies from survivors were met with both sympathy and skepticism, reflecting society's complex attitudes toward allegations of sexual misconduct, especially involving celebrities. The human stories underscored the importance of empathy, justice, and healing, reminding all present that the case was not merely a legal battle, but a profound reckoning with systemic abuses of power. As closing arguments neared, both sides prepared their final strategies. The prosecution planned to emphasize the consistent and corroborated nature of the testimonies, the physical and digital evidence, and the overarching narrative of exploitation. The defense focused on dismantling this narrative by challenging the credibility of witnesses, highlighting alleged procedural missteps, and appealing to jurors' sense of reasonable doubt. The outcome remained uncertain, but the trial had already altered public discourse, inspiring movements dedicated to survivor empowerment and systemic reform. The Hotel Nights case had transcended its origins, becoming a symbol of the fight against abuse in the entertainment industry and a testament to the resilience of those who dared to speak out. The ripple effects of the Hotel Nights revelations extended far beyond the confines of the courtroom, shaking the foundations of the entertainment industry and prompting urgent calls for systemic change. As the trial moved into its later stages, the atmosphere was charged with anticipation and reflection on what the case represented in a broader cultural context. Industry insiders who had long turned a blind eye now faced uncomfortable scrutiny, while advocates pressed for reforms that could prevent such abuses from recurring. One significant development was the emergence of whistleblowers from within the inner circle. Several former employees, speaking under the protection of anonymity or through legal counsel, provided detailed accounts of the operational structures that supported the alleged abuses. These testimonies revealed how power was consolidated and wielded not just by Sean Diddy Combs, but by a network of managers, security personnel, and executives complicit in maintaining silence and compliance. They described a culture where loyalty was enforced through fear and financial incentives, making resistance both risky and isolating. The psychological manipulation employed during the Hotel Nights was dissected by expert witnesses who explained the calculated nature of the abuse. Techniques such as gaslighting, isolation, and coercion were used to undermine the victim's sense of reality and self-worth. These experts emphasized that the trauma inflicted went beyond physical harm, often resulting in long-term psychological damage, including anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Their insights provided critical context to the survivors' testimonies, helping jurors and the public understand the complexities of consent and victimization in environments dominated by power imbalances. Moreover, the trial highlighted the role of technology not only in the commission of abuses, but also in their investigation and exposure. Digital forensics teams detailed how encrypted messaging apps and deleted files were recovered, shedding light on the covert communications that facilitated the organization of the hotel nights. The battle over digital evidence became a focal point, with defense attorneys challenging the methods of collection and authenticity, while prosecutors underscored the transparency and rigor of their investigative process. The impact on Sean Combs's empire was undeniable. Financial disclosures revealed a decline in business partnerships, sponsorship deals, and public appearances, signaling a potential shift in his marketability and influence. Artists previously affiliated with his labels distanced themselves, and industry events reconsidered their associations. However, loyal fans and some industry veterans argued that the trial's outcome should not erase Combs' contributions to music and culture, sparking debates about redemption and accountability. Social media played a pivotal role throughout the trial, acting as both a platform for survivor advocacy and a battleground for opposing narratives. Hashtags supporting the victims trended globally, while counter narratives sought to defend Combs and question the credibility of the allegations. Influencers, celebrities, and activists weighed in, turning the case into a cultural touchstone for discussions about celebrity, power, and justice. This digital dialogue illustrated the complexities of navigating high profile legal cases in an era of instantaneous and often polarized public opinion. The trial also shed light on the complicity of media outlets and journalists who had previously covered the nightlife and party scenes without addressing the darker realities. Critiques emerged regarding the glamorization of celebrity culture and the failure to investigate or expose warning signs earlier. In response, some media organizations pledged to adopt more ethical reporting standards and to support survivors more proactively. Legal experts observed that the Hotel Nights case could set important precedents for future prosecutions involving allegations of systemic abuse and trafficking within elite circles. The challenges faced, such as addressing decades old allegations, navigating powerful defendants, and interpreting complex digital evidence, reflected broader issues in the justice system's ability to respond effectively to such crimes. Recommendations for reform included specialized training for prosecutors and judges, enhanced victim support services, and the establishment of independent oversight bodies. As the trial neared its conclusion, the emotional toll on all participants became increasingly evident. Survivors testified not only about their ordeals, but also about their journeys toward healing and empowerment. Their courage in facing public scrutiny and reliving trauma was widely recognized as a testament to resilience and a call to action. The courtroom atmosphere was charged with moments of raw honesty as survivors challenged societal stigmas and demanded recognition of their humanity. The defense's final push centered on creating doubt about the consistency and motives of the testimonies, portraying the accusers as opportunists seeking fame and financial gain. However, this strategy faced criticism from advocates who argued that such attacks perpetuate harmful stereotypes and deter other victims from coming forward. The trial thus became a microcosm of larger societal debates about victim blaming and the need for cultural change in how sexual misconduct is addressed. Public anticipation built toward the jury's deliberation, with experts predicting a lengthy and complex decision-making process. The verdict was expected not only to impact Sean Combs's personal fate, but also to resonate across the entertainment industry and legal landscape. Regardless of the outcome, the trial had already sparked a reckoning about the use and abuse of power, the importance of accountability, and the ongoing struggle for justice and dignity for survivors. In the aftermath, various advocacy groups plan to leverage the heightened awareness to push for legislative reforms aimed at strengthening protections against trafficking and exploitation. Efforts included proposals for improved whistleblower protections, stricter regulations on industry practices, and enhanced educational programs to raise awareness about consent and abuse. The trial's cultural impact extended into art and media, inspiring documentaries, podcasts, and investigative journalism that sought to explore the broader implications of the case. These projects aimed to keep the conversation alive and ensure that lessons were learned to prevent future abuses. The Hotel Nights saga became a cautionary tale about the perils of unchecked power and the vital importance of vigilance and courage in confronting injustice. As the final chapters of the trial unfolded, the world was reminded that justice is often a complex and arduous journey. The case stood as a testament to the power of survivors' voices and the necessity of systemic change. It challenged individuals, institutions, and society at large to reckon with uncomfortable truths and to commit to building safer, more transparent environments where abuse cannot thrive.